TV.
Good morning and welcome back to Morning at NTV. My name is Idris Matu and we are off to the Kickstarter segment. Now, in October 2021, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres will convene a food systems unit as part of the decade of action to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. Now, to speak to us about this and more, we have Professor Adipala Ekwamo, the Executive Secretary of the Regional Universities Forum for Capacity Building in Agriculture. Good morning, Professor.
Good morning to you. Good morning, viewers.
Good to have you here. How is the morning so far?
It looks beautiful. It's not wet, although we need rain. So it looks a beautiful morning.
Of course, as an agriculturalist, you want rain.
Yes,
but not too much of it.
Not too much. Too much of it causes problem, as you have seen the floods in the country.
Very true.
But when we don't have it also, then we have a problem with our livestock, our crops, and all that, and other complications.
And as Uganda's economy depends so much on agriculture, it is important to sustain the...
Absolutely, and as Ugandans, you should be very proud that in Eastern Africa, it is you and Tanzania that have experiencing reduced hunger. And Uganda actually is recording considerably higher than even Tanzania in terms of reduced hunger. That is to say that your production is meeting the national demand, but also leaving some surplus for export. So congratulations as a country.
Well, Professor, for those who might be watching and are not familiar with you, could you just give us a little bit of your history in the agricultural industry or under the system that you are working under right now?
Well, first, I come from a rural part of Uganda, that is Kabera Maido in eastern Uganda. I was privileged to train in Namilyango College. And then I came and trained for my undergraduate degree in agriculture in Makerere. I did my master's in Makerere, then went abroad to the US to do my PhD. And I came back and worked in Makerere before joining this regional body in 2004, where I'm serving as the Executive Secretary of RUFORUM. For our viewers, RUFORUM is a network of African universities that was created purposely to make sure that we try to reform the way agricultural training is being done at our member universities. We wanted graduates that come out to be very linked to rural communities. In other words, part of their training requires attachment with rural communities so that they can understand better the context under which rural communities work and collaboratively design intervention to improve rural agricultural productivity. So that is what RUFORUM does.
So the Food Systems Summit is coming up in October 2021. What role are you playing as RUFORUM in the United Nations Food Systems Summit Dialogue?
Let me take you back. RUFORUM was actually founded following the Summit of African Heads of States in 2003 when they met in Maputo to review the situation with poverty and hunger across the continent. They decided to come with a continental-wide program called the Comprehensive African Agricultural Development Program, which aimed to work with the member states to deal with the issues of reducing poverty, but more importantly, strengthening the agricultural sector so that we're able to feed our people and reduce hunger and also improve nutrition. So as African universities then, 10 vice chancellors said, but this is what the decision of our leaders. They would like us to give focused attention for reducing hunger and poverty. To do that, you have to have the required human capital to support the government development agenda. So they said, let us form this organization which will have a focused attention on building human capital to strengthen agricultural development and support efforts towards improving nutrition of the people. And that's what we've been doing. Initially from these 10 universities in 5 countries, but now we are working in 38 African countries across the continent.
That's
and
amazing.
our focus us remain, how do we support our governments to handle issues of food and nutritional security? Now, what is the United Nations Summit about? It is, unfortunately, over the last few years, hunger, poverty, and malnutrition has reduced rather than, has increased rather than reduced. So as a network with a focus on the issues of agricultural development, it became imperative that we be engaged in this process. And we were honored by the United Nations Secretary General that he recognized the role that RUFORUM is playing across Africa and decided to designate RUFORUM as one of the 100 champions to mobilize global participation in the United Nations Food System dialogue. So we're tasked to work with member states, individuals, development partners, to see what actions should be taken across the globe. And that is how we come to be engaged in this global summit.
The summit is in October.
It is,
but there is something happening on the 17th of June. What is happening then?
What has happened is that RUFORUM has been engaging at different levels. First, at country levels, with various stakeholders, working with them, getting their perspective. What do we need to do? We have also been facilitating sub-regional dialogue across all regions of Africa. We have also been having a dialogue with various actors, researchers, universities, agricultural advisory services across the globe. On 17th, we are bringing together a team of 13 African leaders that are very focused on advocating for Africa's development, purposely on issues related to increasing inclusivity in intervention in the continent, dealing with the issues, how do we improve the productivity of smallholder farmers, what policy do we need, what research do we need. So we will be having a team of 13 experts. That includes our former heads of states. We shall be having the former heads of state of Liberia will be with us. The former head of state, the former president of Mauritius will be with us. But we will also be having Professor Monty Jones, the first Africa World Food Prize winner with us. We will also be having government ministers of agriculture, education. Agriculture we shall have from Somalia, because Somalia is a fragile state. What do we do in such circumstances? Then we will be bringing Dr. Yemi from the Forum for Agricultural Research in Africa. These are the people. His task is leading an organization that works to strengthen research capacity to develop technologies for supporting agricultural development. It will be with us. But how do you do this? You need the hands. You need the people who develop the skills. So we'll also be having 2 ministers of education to tell us what is the role of education, what is the skill needs to help us respond to some of these challenges in the agricultural sector. Shall be having the Minister of Education from Malawi, and then we shall be having the Minister of Higher Education and Scientific Research from Sudan. So it will be a group of experts sharing their perspective on what we need to do as a continent to respond to the increasing incidence of hunger, poverty, and malnutrition.
That is on 17th.
That's
June.
on 17th.
Who is able to be part of this?
It will be open. We have an open registration. It will be an online virtual event.
Yeah, of course.
That, of course,
with the COVID-19 restrictions.
Yes, and we're glad that NTV will be the one telecasting this, globally. Thank you very much for accepting. But we have the link. Please, we beg people to check our website. It's a very simple website, www.ruforum.org. Please, the registration details is there. So we would like to, not only that we get policymakers, but we also like to see farmers, like to see students, we would like to see advocates, journalists, and others participating in this event. It's an open event.
Is this the first of its kind?
No, it's not the first of its kind. First, in 2005, RUFORUM was able to bring in the ministers of education from Uganda, Kenya, Malawi, Zimbabwe, and Mozambique to see how best do we engage African universities to support Africa's development? So this is not the first. We have continuously engaged universities and policymakers. In 2019, we had a meeting of over 30 ministers from Africa, the ministers of education, agriculture, science and technology and agriculture. And the idea is that most of the intervention requires cross-sectoral approach.
Yeah.
But importantly, you need to make sure that universities are talking to policy, various actors, because the policymakers are the ones who give this policy direction of what needs to be done. So we have periodically organized these events. We also were very honored in 2016 to organize a side event of global heads of states during the United Nations Summit of 2016. So we play that role of how to link universities to policymakers, but without forgetting our cardinal role. Our cardinal role is to make sure our universities are more linked and addressing the needs of the community. They're dealing the issues of how to strengthen agricultural productivity, how do we respond to emerging challenges such as, you are the locusts. We need to build the capacity to respond to that. How do we make sure that we have technologies that respond to climate change? That's the role of universities. That's the role of researchers.
Yeah.
So we also work with those.
Professor, it's often perceived that after all these dialogues that have been done over time, amazing ideas discussed and way forwards put on paper, nothing is done. What is going to happen after 17th June?
First, I would like to give a different perspective. Change is a process.
Yes.
You make steps, but other challenges come on board. The scientists in the National Agricultural Research Organization have come up with some of the best cassava varieties that are grown not only in Uganda and across. But over a period of time, new challenges have emerged.
Yes.
They have to go back and address it. So, and especially when you come to policy, dealing with policy, there's a need for periodic review of what has taken place. But purposely for the United Nations Summit Organization, we have put in a series of arrangements, discussions. One which started at the national level with various stakeholders. The one that then we handled the sub-regional level, Eastern, Central, Southern, West, and North Africa. And then we have also had global convening and continental convening. On the 9th, we had a convening of African ministers. They deliberated, they received the input, what has come out, and they consider what needs to be taken up as policymakers. As part of that process, we are having these consultations on 17th. But then there afterwards, we would like to put forward some of the recommendations for what actions do we need to take at the country level. What message as Africa do we need to convey to the global community through the UN Summit? So on the 1st of July, we will be honored that His Excellency, the President of Malawi, has accepted to host what we are calling a pre-United Nations Food System Summit for a number of African heads of states. So all these deliberations are going to be fed into the discussions that African heads of states will be holding on 1st of July. And it is out of that process, then we will get, in addition to what countries will send directly to the United Nations, we will have a common voice going to the United Nations for what actions do we need to take as a global community and more specifically in Africa.
Professor, you mentioned issues of hunger.
Yes.
Poverty might be excused, but hunger. And Mwananchi might ask himself, we have one of the best climates in the continent of Africa. Why are we still hearing cases of hunger in Uganda? And what, as policymakers probably in Uganda and also forums that are connected to agriculture, what is being done to make sure that we do not hear cases of hunger? We don't have deserts, for example.
Well, I think first it is a complex process. Yes, we have a fairly good environment especially for Uganda.
Yes.
But you also sometimes find that when you have very good production in Kasese, Karamoja has no food. The situation is different. Gulu is different. So there are internal process of how do you make sure that you have a mechanism to distribute the food across the country. But also as a continent and globally, our food system is being faced with new challenge. The environment has changed. Farmers sometimes now don't know when do I plant, when do I harvest. They start and then you get complexities. Then there are also, when they produce, there are other things about nutrition. Nutrition habits have changed.
Yes.
We produce some foods, but many of our new generation prefer processed food rather than eating our traditional food, which are more nutritious, by the way. So the challenge that we have is we need not only to look at production. Secondly, we must make sure that what we produce is not lost before coming to the table. That is what we call post-harvest losses. We need to reduce that. But there's the other challenge we are facing. The population growth is positive, but a major challenge. We have a very, very high population growth, and production is not coping up with the increasing population. That means we have more mouths to feed, even though our production is there. What does it call for? It means that we must strengthen our science to strengthen the productivity. We must use our science to reduce the post-harvest losses. We must use science to add value to the products so that the food that we are bringing to the table for the young generation meet their taste and demand. We need to do that. But we also need to make sure that we're able to respond to these new challenges. You have locusts. How are we going to do it? How are we going to deal with it? We must build the capacity to predict when are we likely going to have a locust outbreak. We need a capacity to predict the demand globally. How do we position Uganda to be able to, where's the demand? How do you do this? You need what we call foresight, looking into the future, so that our policymakers are not guided simply by what is today
happening,
but
being reactive
what is likely to happen. So we have a multitude of challenges in the continent. Yes, we have a good environment, but some places it's very, very fragile. In some cases, we are destroying the environment, including in Uganda. Trees deforestation is very, very high. DRC is not able to feed itself.
Bad fishing.
But, bad fishing and all that. In fact, to tell you, it is Uganda, Tanzania, and Malawi in Southern Africa that are actually recording reduced hunger. Most of the countries, including Kenya. Kenya now imports almost 40% of its food. Can you imagine that? South Africa, with all its technology, also has several food deficiencies, largely because of poor distribution systems. DRC, with all that environment, still need to bring in food. Then we have these unfortunate things that happen in our continent, the conflicts. The conflicts make things worse. And then we have faced this issue of COVID. It has disrupted most of the production system. So it means now we must actually become what we say, our agriculture must be more intelligent. We also must adapt new technologies to deal with some of those things.
Improve on the science, as you mentioned.
We must
earlier.
improve on the science.
And there is an interesting thing that you mentioned, Professor, about having this growth in population, but then the production is on a stalemate. Is there something being done?
It is increasing, but not at the rate that we need to deal to be able to cope with the increased number of mouths. So we need to increase really our productivity much higher.
What are some of the issues that are causing that low increase that's not meeting that?
First, we need to strengthen our investment. We need to make sure that NARO is well funded to undertake the research, to develop new technologies that can increase productivity, but also that can help NARO to make sure that it works with the various agencies to deal with the issues of post-harvest losses. We must also have the capacity to deal with the issues of aflatoxin. You need to strengthen the national agricultural research system make sure that it has the resources to do this. Then there are new opportunities. Uganda still is a very strong niche horticultural crop. The Arab countries believe that the best pineapple is from Uganda. I must say, I do agree with them. The best pineapple is from Uganda. But we need to turn that into a monetary advantage, not only for the middle people, but also adequate resources reach our farmers. How do you do that? You must build your research capacity. But how do you build your research capacity? You must build your human capital. But with those willing to work, no, it will not work alone. You will need other sectors to be strengthened. I think that's why the government is putting emphasis on road infrastructure. Above all, you need good policies and good governance to make things work.
Professor, you work with universities.
Yes.
And there's a claim that most of what is studied in universities, in the classroom, on the classboard, does not translate in what is needed in the field. What is being done to improve that situation?
First, I really would like to appreciate the feedback from the stakeholders, because as universities, they need to respond to what is the feedback, where we're doing well, where we're not doing well. Secondly, there's a lot of reform taking place in universities to address some of these issues. They would like to make sure that their training is more practical. They are much, much more linked with the rural communities. I remember having an audience with the First Lady and the Minister of Education. She was concerned that we are not seeing impact at the local level. But to have that impact, we must be able to support institutions like universities to have programs that specifically address the issues of rural communities, that you are able to take students to be based in the rural communities so that they better appreciate what are the issues at the rural communities, but also explore jointly with the communities what are the opportunities. These are what the universities are doing. There's excellent program at Gulu University where the students are mapped, the university have mapped the geographical area, not only in the Gulu district, but around, where students are now attached to the communities to deal with agricultural issues. The same is happening at Bishop University in Mbarara. There is a lot of community engagement. More importantly, the issue of trying to build entrepreneurship skills for not only for the universities, but also out of school education. This is what Bishop Stuart University is working on. This is what Mbara University of Science and Technology is working on. This is what Ndeje is doing an excellent job. Uganda Matters University, this is what they are working. They are trying to remodel the education skills such that they are more practically oriented. They have the entrepreneurship skills, and they have come up with a number of businesses. I don't know whether you wanted, you visited the exhibition by the Uganda Higher Council for Higher Education.
No, I haven't.
You could actually see the innovations that are coming from the universities that are already being taken up by business communities. Some of the students are already entrepreneurs. So the university are reorienting that to bring business orientation, not only within agriculture, even a lawyer, even you a journalist, you can be a business, you can be an entrepreneur. How do you make your profession more entrepreneurial? How do you make it in such a way that you are able to create employment not only for you, but also others? So yes, I do agree that we still have a long way to go, but I think the universities are making efforts to reform their program. Agribusiness is now a common skill enhancement training program across the university. Gulu have a community engagement program. That's the same thing being implemented in Busetima, Uganda Christian University. Of course, the scale is still limited. And this is where policy support is extremely important. I call upon the Uganda government to give greater investment on human capital so that we're able to respond to these emerging challenges. You have seen how we are fighting with COVID. We have had to wait for vaccines, and we are still waiting for vaccine.
Because we don't have national capacity.
We don't have the
build
national
that.
capacities. This is where investment in science is very strong. And this is why, for me, I want to appeal to the government. We need a dedicated ministry of science, technology, and innovation, as has been before. I plead with the government.
Professor, just look straight into the camera there and plead to them directly.
Yes, I would like to plead to His Excellency, the President of Uganda. Please, the way to proceed is science is what has spurred development in every part of the world. We are not going to be an exception. Your Excellency, please let's give greater focus and investment on strengthening science, technology, and innovation capacity. Let us have a dedicated ministry that is focused on this. This is the way to go, Your Excellency. This is the way to go, members of the government.
The policy makers.
The policy makers.
Professor, before I let you go, do you have any informative information that me, as an agricultural enthusiast, might get from Reforum?
First, I think I want to mention that, maybe I should have said, how come Reforum that coordinates all these universities across Africa to be
Nothing political.
No, it is because it was a joint effort by then the Vice Chancellor of Makerere, Professor John Sebufu, the Honorable Minister of Education, Bamata Sire, if I recall her name, and the late Honorable Kategaya. When the opportunity came that we need a secretariat, a country to host this regional body, it is those three, the two ministries of Foreign Affairs, Education, and Makerere that put a bid, and that is why Reforum is here. Reforum remain dedicated to supporting African governments to strengthen the human capital. We do have scholarships. We offer them. Please check with our website, but the scholarships go to the universities because it is the universities who are responsible for what? For this capacity development. Our research funds go to the universities, but the universities must work with other actors, like the National Research Organization, like NADS. They need to work with that. So basically, Reforum here is to work with the member universities so that we have a better capacity to support development processes, especially within the agricultural science, the agricultural sector, but also the whole field of science, technology, and innovations. So, sir, the opportunities are there. Add your voice to the government, and again, appeal to the government. Please, education is the fulcrum for development. Let us make sure there is inclusivity in education across the education value chain. But we are not going to make progress unless we strengthen the science and the higher education sector. They have the pull that pulls all the other sectors. So I would like to appeal to Uganda government, please do give considerable attention to that. I'm very pleased that human capital has a pretty good share in the current budget. I congratulate the government for that. Thank you very much. And I think for us who are the beneficiaries, we also need to do our part to support the government.
Thank you so much, Professor, for coming through.
Thank you.
A very intense and informative discussion we've had on agriculture, and I hope you at home can learn a little bit more. There is a summit coming up in October 2021. I think we shall be airing it here on NTV. But before that, on June 17th, Reforum has organized a dialogue, again, on food security. It is very important to make sure that we do not have hunger cases in Uganda. I mean, we are the Pearl of Africa, so look out for that. It will be happening and live here on NTV. Now, we are going to take a short break, and coming up, we are going to be discussing the budget.